All right, ready, puppeteers?
Ready.
And action.
Hey everyone, welcome to the KreatureKid channel and an in-depth look at the creation of the Box Demon, one of my personal favorite puppets we built for the Onyx, the Fortuitous, and the Talisman of Souls movie. In this video, we're going to talk about more of the construction of the puppet, the materials used, and kind of what I'm doing in breaking down the process of building this character and bringing him to life. So our first steps when approaching a concept design like the Box Demon is I like to work traditionally, which is pencil and paper, doing all kinds of different designs and throwing everything I can out there that I think would look really cool and unique with a character. I really like the idea of when you open the box, the creature kind of unfolds. So in sketches like this, you could see all these little spider legs or fingers or something. I was always trying to envision like if the Box Demon was like curled up in a way that looked really creepy, and then when it opens, the creature unfolds. We did get a bit of that in the final outcome of the creature's hands coming out, curling his talons around the box. Some of these designs are just straight up silly cartoons, like this fat little demon with a little booze bottle here. And I really even got out there with some of these designs, kind of this weird, slender, lanky thing that kind of wants to come out of the box and be its own character running around. But after talking further with the director, it was more like the demon is living in this box forever and he can't get out. He's been stuffed in this box and he's permanently trapped in there forever. So then we started designing kind of the creature's unable to move and he's in there permanently. So we wanted him to feel really compressed and uncomfortable in there. And then we brought up the suggestions of the creature being a part of the box, like the box is kind of merging with him or he's becoming part of the wood. And that's when we came up with the design of the beak, where the beak is protruding out of the box, kind of in between the doors. And the beak would be made of wood as well. Then I start taking it into 3D design using the program ZBrush. And in there I can kind of quickly come up with some designs and get some turnarounds and stuff, and it's a little bit easier to kind of envision what the final sculpture of the character will look like. So when I started getting to the digital designs, it's a full mass crammed into a box. And we started with designs like this that are very much like Krang from Ninja Turtles, or something where maybe the back end of the creature is breaking out of the box as well. But we really landed on wanting to keep the box, everything's contained within the box. Maybe the demon's not there unless summoned, and then he somehow magically squishes into the box from his little home or something. And that's when we landed on this digital design. This is the one that kind of invoked what we wanted to see. It had the beak element, the wood beak element that we really liked, the tusks on his lower jaw that kind of made him feel very Jim Henson-y. Just something about this the director was really leaning towards. I thought it was very fun. Now after this stage, we basically just use this 3D digital model as reference to start bringing it into full-size clay form. So when starting the sculpture, I basically just build a giant wood armature, just a giant wood platform. That's the dimensions I want the final sculpture to be. And I coat it in shellac, which is just basically keeping the water-based clay that I'm using from absorbing into the wood. Once we have our wood structure built, we start just putting armature wire and screwing it in just so the clay has something to grip on. Now, using the 3D model as reference, I'm basically just trying to match and also redesign the character in clay, kind of establishing, my own take on my digital design for it to work practically. And kind of refine the character. I'm a fairly slow sculptor, so this sculpture took probably about a month to do.
His legs are here, so his knees are up here.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
His shin.
And these are his arms?
These are just rolls. There are no arms. So that's his knee, that's his leg. The fat roll is squished right here. And then his hands are right here.
Now, once the clay sculpture is done, we go through a kind of molding process that we don't really show here, but it was a epoxy fiberglass mold that was made. And as you can see here, we also make the reverse essentially coring it out, basically giving us where the negative space in this mold is what our silicone skin is injected in. The skin for the puppet is a platinum silicone. We wanted something that was the most skin-like, but something we didn't have to bake like foam latex because we didn't have the ability to do that. The look of the silicone skin is incredible and something you can't really match. Now, once you get the final skin pulled out of the mold, there's seam lines and things you have to address, so we go over those with more silicone and patch all those seams and fix it all and get it ready for paint. Now, once you get the skin, you need to have it mounted because it's just a floppy skin. So what we did is we took the core that we used to run the reverse of the skin, basically, and cut it up to be essentially a skeleton that we would mount inside of the wood case. And on that skeleton, we would glue the skin to it. So in areas the skin was flopping, like the lips and the mouth, and then in areas like the cheekbones and the forehead and his little legs on the side, those were all glued onto a hard fiberglass surface that we could then bolt inside of the box. For the box demon's hands, we actually did one sculpture of a 3-fingered hand that was symmetrical, pretty much. That way we can just do 2 copies of the hands without having to do 2 different sculptures, 2 different molds. So his hands are just duplicates of each other. And in those silicone hands, we also had to do 4-way stretch fabric so that the rubber doesn't tear over time and it stretches nice.
I think it's just gonna have to be 2 people crammed, and then the person whose hands these are is in front, doing this.
Yeah.
Someone doing the mouth, someone back here reaching around doing the ears. There's enough room in that. And then someone's hands down here with them like sitting in front underneath the table.
Now, when approaching the box demon's box, we had a bunch of designs that were ornate and had carvings and filigree and all these accessories and stuff. And then what we landed on was a old Victorian dresser that I found on the side of the road. This beautiful drawers and aged wood that was falling apart, and I wanted to upcycle this piece that I had for a little bit. So I tasked the carpenter to disassemble this dresser and used all antique wood. Now, things like the hinges for the box, we found another old piece of furniture that we used the hinges from, and what we kind of landed on is that the hinge mechanism is built into the creature's beak. So the creature has these 2 little slots on his beak, and when the hinges close, it locks into his beak. So the idea was that whatever mechanism is holding the box closed and locked is inside of his face.
Because then that gives you more clearance to put in your palette. That's the only thing. Because I like what he's doing. I like that he's gripping it from the front. But then that shortens the surface area unless or the height.
For you, having that little bit of a bar wouldn't be bad, but I wouldn't go like all the way back to the wall. Okay. It's almost gonna be.
The creature's eyes were kind of designed to be fogged over, like he's blind, like he's always in this box and he never sees the sun, so he's always he never knows what's going on. So we went to this amazing eye company who we use for all of our eyes, Fourth Seal Studios. The eyeball mechanisms were all 3D printed and modeled, so we could mount the 3D printed eye mechanisms inside the head and tuck it away on these little shelves for the performers to still operate the mouth. It was really tight in that space. Everything was 3D printed for the mechs, and then with the eyeballs, they were hollow, so we 3D printed little gaskets that fit inside that control how the eyes pivot. For the eyelids, we simply just put sculpting epoxy over the 3D printed shells for the lids. I really wanted the look of the lids being completely separate from the skin of the face, like it's all tucked away in all the rolls. So instead of having to have the eyes closed and you see all the skin attached, and stretching, we simply just did a hard shell of a lid sliding in between rolls of the rubber. It simplified the eye blinks and took a lot of strain off of the servos, since it was kind of our first time doing mechanical eyes like these.
Band or something that cross.
Yeah, something to just gonna lock it in. We could go with something firm, but motion under even, or like a dense
Piece of leather strap or something.
Yeah, just kind of put it across there. It doesn't need, like, he's not talking with this. It's more like, I could even see just kind of doing a little pull on it.
Yeah.
Kind of furl it in.
Yeah. I don't mind making it looser. I don't mind doing that, because I think it is actually set in a little too far for those locks to fully go in there. So I don't mind having a little bit of extra play. We had to glue this super close to, like, I thought we'd have more range of movement, but this is all so close for the mechanisms and stuff. I mean, there's a little tiny gap there just for our gluing surface. So we needed as much glued on here, because I don't want any of this tearing while we're playing with it. So I wouldn't mind extending this a bit further so it can stretch and do a little bit more with this. The creature's inner mouth was all foam fabricated. We wanted more compression than what silicone is kind of capable of doing. Silicone doesn't compress very well. So we fabricated foam for the inner mouth and for the tongue, and also a socket in the tongue so that you could make the tongue wiggle with your thumb as you're puppeteering the bottom jaw. And then what we did is we just did a thin layer of silicone over all that foam to kind of blend it in with the rest of the head and seam the foam inner mouth to the lips of the creature. Now with the silicone skin, what we do is we put it on our kind of form so it's held in shape, and we glue it all together, and it's all the gluing and seaming is kind of done, and then we clean it really well so all the oils from our hands and powders and everything is removed, and just take it down to the raw silicone material. And then for painting, what we do is we just do a diluted silicone, sometimes caulking, sometimes a silicone that you're adding kicker to, and then you use just standard oil paints, just cheap oil paints for pigmenting the silicone. So you're airbrushing thin down silicone on top of the silicone so it binds really well. And airbrushing that thin down color, you have to just keep going over and over, making the colors deeper and richer as you go. An interesting part about building the puppet like this also is that there's so many different types of materials. There's 3D printed plastic talons, and there's a fiberglass beak, and there's resin teeth. So a lot of the time is also figuring out how to attach all these things together. Stuff doesn't like to stick to silicone. The only thing that sticks to silicone is silicone. So to attach a fiberglass beak to a silicone face, you have to silicone glue a type of cloth or a towel of some sort, a material that can be glued down on one side and stay soft and grippy on the other side. And then you can glue with a resin glue or a barge or an epoxy, you can glue something like fiberglass down to that cloth. So a lot of the times we're just trying to figure out how to glue pieces onto silicone skins that won't tear off over time, that'll hold. So he was really tricky as far as the beak getting glued down with the amount of pull that's going on, so that doesn't tear, but it also stretches the skin nicely. Things like the resin teeth, getting the silicone lip glued down without having to tear in those areas, or his fingernails without them falling off over time. So all of this stuff has to go into building the puppet too, is longevity so it doesn't fall apart during the film. Alright, so let's just do some different tests of expressions. Alright, so first, close eyes, he's sleeping. Kristen, he's sleeping, he's just kind of neutral, and then he wakes up surprised, eyes up. Eyes up. Kristen, start getting a little bit more extreme. He's looking around, eyes darting, eyes open. Okay.
You're doing good.
Yeah, go angry again. There you go.
That's great. That's awesome.
And then we go into rehearsals. With this puppet and the amount of time we had about a month of rehearsing. I mean, we're always rehearsing when also trying to figure out movements and gluing things down. But once he was pretty much done, with the 3 people inside, we really got a feel for who's doing what, the extreme movements you have to do with your hands, whoever is controlling the brows and the ears at the same time, when to look up and when to look down and when to make those ears wiggle, and then running the dialogue so it looks like the creature's talking, and it's exaggerated enough to where it doesn't look like just a floppy Muppet puppet, but it looks like it's speaking words. And then also on the side is someone operating the eyes and the blinks on a remote. And then once we bring that puppet onto set is when we do our final dressing of sliming him up and making him oozy and putting slime in his mouth and all that stuff. We have to oil his eyes so on the day in the camera he looks fresh and sparkly and alive. That's what really brings the character alive is adding the drool into the mouth, and we use silicone oil to oil up the eyeballs so they really glisten and have a kind of teary look to them. And in the end, with a combo of silicone and fiberglass and resins and construction and this group of people building this character, it looks alive on camera. And once audio does their work for the final film and adds that voice to the creature, the illusion of this being an actual monster in a box, I think really came through well and is a great example of the artistry and the amount of time that goes into making something that stands out and pops and looks alive without giving away that there's 3 people behind it making it just talk and say a line and a crew of people, you know, watching it on camera and making the eyes move and sliming him up in between takes. And that's just one of the beautiful parts of creating creatures for film.
Speaking of which, can I see the eyes open?
I know.
Great.
And ready? And action.
Come closer, my son. Closer. Let it in, my son.
I hope you guys enjoyed this look at the creation of the Box Demon. If you like this, please like and subscribe, and definitely check out Onyx the Fortuitous. It's streaming now on Tubi and Amazon, and it's also available on Blu-ray with a bunch more bonus features of us making all these creatures and puppets.